All right, thank you all for coming back from lunch. I appreciate your being on time and respecting our expectations. I'm just going to give a little reminder of one of our expectations was respecting our space. So if you could all make sure that you clean up some of your lunch mess before we leave, so that way we can be respectful of our custodians who come in and clean up after us. So thank you for that. This morning we had the chance of reviewing our coaching materials on coaching behavior and what it means to be a coach and how to work on those skills personally. This afternoon we're going to move into coaching the training materials around classroom settings. So this is going to be new materials. I'm not going to explicitly teach each piece of the materials, but looking more about how is this helpful to you as a coach to take back to your team. So I really want you to be thinking about your coaching role and looking at this material through that lens as a coach. So before I move into the content, I can't stress enough the importance of this classroom piece. It really helps with sustainability and fidelity of implementation. The classroom systems need to be tied to school-wide systems. So looking at our classroom structures and practices and how they support our school-wide system is a critical component of our PBIS implementation. So it's a really important piece to think about, also a challenging piece to think about, because classrooms are everyone's personal domains. And some folks get a little touchy-feely about, what are you telling me to do in my personal classroom? So think about some of those attitudes, behaviors, personalities in your building as we move through this content. I also want to point out a couple of resources as we're going through this material, because it's going to be really important for you to take this material and think about how am I going to train not only my PBIS team, but our school staff on this. So you guys have access to all of the training materials on the NEPBIS website, so you can take any of these slides that are helpful and use them in your training. There's also some great supporting resources and documents about research, about supporting classroom implementation, all under the Classroom tab, so make sure that you are checking out those resources today, tomorrow, through implementation. So don't forget about those. So let's look at these evidence-based practices. There's 10 of them. Again, they are evidence-based, which means there's research behind them. Again, I'm going to cite that supporting document that's on that Classroom tab. It is a great tool to use, so that is where all the research behind this is. If I could say to take out your pens and star any one slide, this would be it. So everyone star the slide. This is one that you're going to take back to your team and to your school. This is a great training slide, great training materials in this, so I would say to star this one. Don't keep this piece of paper a secret. I've done trainings where I actually just photocopy this one slide and hand it out, not a secret. There will be more explicit training on each of these 10 strategies. Today I'm just going to quickly go over them, and then we're going to talk about your role as the coach. So when we look at these strategies, minimizing crowding and distraction, that's really looking at your classroom environment. How are we setting up our classrooms for success? Maximizing structure and predictability. What are our routines in our classroom? How do students know what's expected of them? What are things that we typically do as adults in our classrooms? What do students do? What do volunteers do? What do staff members do? So that's looking more at routines. The third one is stating, teaching, and reviewing our expectations. Those are your 3 to 5 behavior expectations that we're developing here as a team. How often are we actually defining them, teaching them, reviewing them, evaluating how it's working, prompting them, and ensuring that in the classrooms that is happening. We need to teach our behavioral skills just like we teach our academic skills. Number 4, this is about our praise to correction ratio. It should be about a 4-to-1 ratio. I will say, personally, when I go out and do trainings, that's where folks get hung up on. They think that 4-to-1 is like an unachievable target. It is achievable. So thinking about how can we do that and what are some strategies that we can support staff with. Opportunities to respond and active engagement, number 5 and 6. That kind of sometimes goes back to just good teaching. Some folks might say I'm really great at that. It's a good, strong skill of mine. Others might need some support on what does that mean, how do I do that? So thinking about that. Actively and continuously supervising. What are some quick, easy strategies that we can do as a teacher to make sure that we're actively doing that? Sometimes that's seen as like, oh, that's an easy checkbox for me. Yeah, I supervise my students. But even simple things. I was in the classroom observing a teacher, and just as simple as I'm providing feedback to you as a student, instead of turning my back and talking with you, I position myself so that way I'm in front of the class, but still providing this one-on-one support, but able to lift my head and see all the students. So just body positioning for supervision. Number 8, responding to inappropriate behaviors. we all know that PBIS is a great evidence-based tool to kind of support positive behavior in our schools. We're still going to be struggling with some behavior. It's not going to be the checkbox to fix all behaviors in our classrooms. So how are we responding to challenging behaviors? What does that look like? What are our strategies for acknowledging students? So what are we setting up for that acknowledgement system in our classroom? And how are we providing feedback to students? Positive feedback and for error corrections. So those are the 10 evidence-based practices for classrooms that we're going to be reviewing in our team training in more depth. I want you all to take a minute to look over that list and think about, for me as a trainer, when I come to your site, what would be helpful for me to know about your school regarding this? What might be something that'll hang a team up, hang a staff member up? Is there any challenging personalities, conflicts that might come up? So I can really make sure that we highlight that in the training material. So take a minute to look at that and think again about, you know, what could be a challenge or an area of concern for staff when they see this list. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Yep.
Okay. Just responding to the inappropriate behaviors quickly, positively, and directly. I feel a lot of the staff like to make it a big to-do, send them out of the classroom, and then have a big powwow with the kid outside, which to me has always been a struggle because that might be giving the kid exactly what they want. So how to do it quick in the moment rather than making it a big counseling session outside of the room.
Perfect. So thinking about looking at evaluating what are some practices around staff currently, and what I'm hearing from you, if this is correct, that some staff kind of go to the extreme. So we remove the student from the situation, we do some individualized attention. So if it's an attention-focused behavior, we're really getting into that attention even more. So making sure that we are providing them with some tools to kind of put in that tool belt of what can they do instead. So it's not just about giving them these nice words of responding quickly, efficiently, and promptly. We need to maybe do some explicit teaching on how to do that and what that looks like, and providing a continuum of supports, because we don't want folks to feel like they are losing the domain of their classroom, that they're losing control, but that we're giving them some tools on how to do that. Any other areas that might come up for a concern?
I work with high school teachers, and they don't think that teaching students behavior is appropriate, that they should come to high school already knowing how to behave.
Perfect. So you're going to actually perfectly segue me into my next slide. So I'm going to put it up just to kind of segue into that material as well. For all of you else, please hold on to those, because during our break time I'm going to check in with you to make sure that we are using that to prep for your training materials. But that question there, if I teach high school, I teach science, I don't teach behavior. So they should come in to know respect, they should know safety. The important piece there is academics and behavior are tied. We know that. If we don't have a big classroom of good behavior management, we're not getting good academic instruction. We need to teach what we teach, like in academics, to behavior. Students need to know what's expected of you in your science classroom, just like they need to know what's expected of you in your math classroom, and that those expectations need to be explicitly taught to them so they know what's happening in their classroom, which is a challenge we see at the secondary level, so I'm not going to minimize that challenge. We see it often. But ensuring that we make that link between academics and behavior, and that teaching expectations, so students need to know what it looks like in your environment. So the importance of that classroom matrix. What does your classroom expectations look like and sound like and feel like explicitly for your place? So when I look at what are the basic principles of implementing PBIS in the classroom, that good teaching includes behavior management. So good teaching, good instruction includes behavior management. If you're doing behavior management, typically you're doing good instruction. So those two pieces are tied: good teaching, good behavior. The next is it applies to a 3-tiered prevention logic. So in your classroom, you should see about 80% of your students responding to those tier 1 strategies. That if you're implementing them well, if you're doing all of those 10 practices, maybe not 100% all the time, we're not going to be perfect at each of them, that 80% of your class should be responding. If 80% of your class is not responding, that means it's an issue in tier 1. So we need to look at what are some of maybe those practices that I need to beef up or do a better job at. So looking again at our own practices and using the same kind of triangle logic there. Again, classroom systems need to be linked to school-wide systems. This is the basis of our framework and what we're building here together. They need to be explicitly linked. We can't be doing something completely separate in our classroom environments that isn't tied to school-wide behavior. And then to your question there, teaching the skills. We want students to know what's expected of them. We want them to succeed. We need to let them know how that looks and how that feels. So if you want to just take a minute to kind of pair share and think with a neighbor about how you might be able to take some of this material back to your team and some teachers that you're working with. So take a minute there and share with a neighbor.